As you know, we have a wonderful technical staff available to you if you're having or experiencing technical difficulties. Please call or text the number on the screen, and they are pleasantly available to help you to do that. Next slide, please. Today's meeting, you all are familiar. We're going to start with our principle of agreements. And then I believe we do have someone waiting for public comment. We welcome you into our space today. We'll have a project update from our project director. And then we will get into some of the work of this body in regards to approval or recommending the intergovernmental agreement letter of support. And then we'll move into some exciting design survey results and also be looking to this body today to make a recommendation on some decisions regarding elements of honor or recognition in regards to the African-American historic albino community. We'll do some exercises around updates with the design team and move into our next steps. Next slide, please. You all know and are no stranger, your voice matters. That means if I'm not hearing from you, you all are familiar with me by now, I will call out to you because all that's in you, your expertise and connection to this community are valuable to this process. And so we need to hear from you. We ask you to continue to be authentic and genuine. We never have that problem with you all expressing who you are genuinely, and we appreciate that. Listen for understanding. We understand it's a passionate process, and so we ask you to deal with issues and not people. Sometimes we're going to continue, as we have in the past, to experience discomfort, but we ask that you would remain respectfully engaged. We understand in this Zoom world, you may have other things you're attending to. As much as possible, we would love to have those who are engaging today in the HAAB or presenting to have their cameras on. If you do not, we completely understand. We just would love to be able to see your face. And then expect and accept non-closure. We won't solve everything today, but it is our goal to move the needle forward this afternoon. So next slide, please. With that, I am going to turn it over to our technical team to help us with someone or those who might be waiting to give public comment.
Excellent. Thank you, Erica. Members of the public viewing the meeting on the live stream are now invited to make a verbal public comment by phone at this time. And if you wish to do so, please dial the phone number on your screen on the right-hand side and enter the meeting ID and passcode shown below the phone number. And after doing so, you'll be placed in a virtual waiting room until your turn to speak. And then when the time comes, we'll invite you to unmute yourself and speak your comment. Speakers will have up to 2 minutes for their comment, and then they'll be muted at time. If you'd like to provide more extensive comments, you have options to do that are listed on the meeting agenda. And in addition to any verbal public comments we hear today, we received 4 written comments and 1 voicemail that were shared with HAAB members in advance of today's meeting. And if you are joining us on the live stream, please remember to mute your speakers to minimize feedback. And with that, I'm checking, and it looks like we do have a few, 2 members of the public wishing to make a public comment. So I'll go ahead and admit the first person here. And it is the phone number ending in, maybe they dropped off. Phone number ending in 9585. We'll invite you to make your comment. Comments are limited to 2 minutes. So I'll go ahead and share our on-screen timer. Just so we can all view the timer together. And then the phone number with person with the phone number ending in 9585, please unmute yourself and speak your comment.
Thank you very much. And thank you, members, for sitting on a council or a committee. It's a lot of work. For the record, I am Sharon Nassett. I'm talking to you today about an alternative that has never been vetted and not studied, that has been around since the I-5 partnership of 2000, when at that time Mayor Katz did not follow the NEPA process and removed all alternatives without vetting or studying them, and only focused on projects closer to the Columbia River. Our project is less than 1/3 of the cost, removes traffic from on top next to the Lloyd Center exit by providing an on and off ramp from the south. It is all within the right-of-way and relieves congestion. To have a process where you have outreach, you have to have inreach. We would like our alternative put in this process, and there has not been a normal NEPA scoping process for this environmental impact and to have this alternative looked at. Modeling is something that only takes a few hours with the processes we have currently. Again, my name is Sharon Nassett. My phone number is 503-283-9585. And as representatives of the community, you must look at all alternatives. There is absolutely no reason to not fully look at an alternative. Whether you decide in the end that it is what you want or not, your eyes need to be fully open. Please contact me. And Ed Washington, I would like your public contact information and have asked for it continuously. Thank you and good luck, members. Please look at thirdbridgenow.org for other alternatives of crossing the Columbia River.
Thank you so much for that comment. We have one other person hoping to make a public comment. I'm admitting them into the meeting space right now. It is a person with the phone number ending in 7189. You have a public comment you'd like to share, please unmute.
That would be Keith Edwards.
2 minutes.
Thank you for letting me in.
Did you have a public?
Hello.
It sounds like that's
No, I don't have a public comment. I'm a member of HAAB and I'm on my phone.
Oh, apologies. All right. Well, that was it for our public comments then. That concludes.
Our apologies, Mr. Edwards. We didn't recognize the number, or they didn't. So thank you for your patience, and we'll make sure.
Thank you.
Indeed.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and go back on mute.
Thank you. Natalie, did you happen to see any additionals? Was that the extent of public comment for today?
That was the extent of public comment. Yes, that was everyone. I can pull up the presentation again.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Glad to have you in the space, Mr. Edwards. With that, I am going to turn it over to Ms. Megan Channel.
Thanks, Erica. And in this Zoom world, there's like never a dull moment. So thank you. Thanks for having grace with everyone here. I wanted to kick off our project updates really with a recap from this weekend. First and foremost, I hope that everyone had a wonderful Juneteenth weekend. We, as part of the Rose Porter project, were out in the festivities, and we're at the Juneteenth celebration, Oregon's 50th Juneteenth celebration this weekend with a sponsored booth and really sharing information about the project with the community. So it was a chance to kind of get out there and just have one-on-one, like real life, in-person conversations with the community, and staff was there, again, just to share information about the project with the festival attendees, and really just an opportunity to bring the community together. So wanted to just share the good work of the team out there, but also kind of thank you to the HAAB for all of your sort of leadership and guidance and sort of how and where we need to be in the community as well. So thank you everybody for that. By way of some other updates, also wanted to share, I think on the next slide, there's a list of things that I'm going to talk about. One is an update on the federal delegation letter. Would love to give an update just on what to expect around tomorrow with our Portland City Council meeting expected. And then some updates just around some other community engagement components and schedule. So I'll start with the federal delegation letter. This is something that I know we've kind of chatted with you about a couple times. I think even a couple months ago, our at the time communications director, Tia Williams, was the one to kind of tee this off with the HAAB. But this is really a letter that in anticipation of us seeking funding for the project from the upcoming infrastructure bill. It would be incredibly powerful if the HAAB was inclined to write a letter of support to the federal delegation as we're going to be anticipating seeking federal dollars to help fill our funding gap. I know that the HAAB just went through a process with Erica's leadership to put together a letter of support for the upcoming city council meeting, which I know is on your agenda for today. But if that process worked well for the HAAB members, if this letter of support to the federal delegation is something that the HAAB is interested in, that's something that Erica and I could work on in more detail and kind of follow that same process. So would love to hear, now or in future conversations and one-on-ones, kind of your thoughts around the process on the letter drafting. So that's the federal delegation piece. Again, I think it'll be incredibly important that we show show the HAAB's voice and elevate the HAAB's voice as we move forward in applying for these grants and the dollars that we want to make sure are benefiting the historic Albina community with the outcomes of the project. Second piece here is we have an exciting moment tomorrow. We are going to be in front of Portland City Council tomorrow morning. The council will be taking on the intergovernmental agreement that is between ODOT and the city of Portland for the city to re-engage in the project. And the intergovernmental agreement is really around the state reimbursing the city's time to engage in the project. And so it's an exciting moment. We hope that it goes well with the council conversations tomorrow, but it is an important step in initiating the re-engagement for City of Portland in our project. So look forward to the outcome of that. There's also a public poll that is out as part of our broader community engagement. This is something that we've done on an annual basis, but it's really a poll out to the entire to the full Portland metro area, statistically significant as a way to understand sort of what's the community's thought around the project and different components of the project that really helps us hone in on our design and engagement efforts. So this is something that is separate and distinct from the urban design survey that was just out, for which the HAAB was a critical part of informing and helping get out. But if you're hearing about public polls that are in process, just didn't want to surprise any of you that that's currently underway. We expect the results to be kind of in the July timeframe. So we'll be coming back to the HAAB with that information. And then on schedule, I believe there are 2 slides to follow. The first is on the NEPA schedule for the environmental review. Yep, here we go. So just as a kind of a reminder and just update for the HAAB, we're still in the process of updating the environmental review to incorporate the proposed hybrid 3 highway cover design. So we're doing this in partnership with the Federal Highway Administration and preparing a supplemental environmental assessment. So we're in the midst of putting together the technical analyses and documentation and expect to have that document out for public comment by early fall of this year. And then once it's out for public comment and we're sort of take in all of the comment, we'll be working with, again, our partners at the Federal Highway Administration on an anticipated NEPA decision document that would be in the first quarter of 2023. And again, the outcome of this environmental review process really will tee up our movement into final design and then ultimate construction start that we're expecting in late 2023. Speaking of that, the next slide talks about just that. Just as a note, we continue to be progressing the preliminary design for the project, really with an upfront focus on the early work packages. These are the things that I know that the HAAB has been deeply engaged on by way of the urban design components. But again, early work package A, which you see on the left side of your screen, that sort of I-5 mainline improvements as they intersect with Interstate 405. And then early work package B, which you see on the right side of your screen, that is I-5 mainline improvements that intersect with Interstate 84. Those will be the first two early work packages with construction starting in late 2023, followed by early work package C, which starts to kind of build into the center. And then ultimately main construction package, which is the highway cover and the local street improvements on top. I do want to note that we have made a modification as it relates to early work packages B and C. Previously, the I-5 mainline bridge, which we refer to as the Holiday Haslow Bridge, it's that the bridge of I-5 that crosses over the Rose Quarter Transit Center. That was previously shown as part of early work package C. That is now part of package B. And as we were working with our contractor and our design team, it just made logical sense from a constructability, cost, and community impact perspective to have that bundled into one package. So I just wanted to make that note for the HAAB. So those are my main project updates. I guess one last thing, I know that Janelle Bell is not able to be with us here today, so I'll do kind of a quick hit on a COAC update. The COAC,
I'm
yep.
not sure, Salome just joined us, so I wasn't sure if she was representing Janelle.
I don't.
I just wanted to confirm. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. So for the COAC had their last meeting in May, where they really had a robust conversation with our CMGC, Construction Management General Contractor, partners at Hamilton Sant Joint Venture and Raymore Construction, really around implementing the diversity and subcontracting plan, digging into the details of these early work packages and what that's going to mean from a workforce perspective as well. And then COAC, because COAC was set up to really be that oversight committee as we go into construction and making sure that we're meeting what we said we were going to do, what we say we're going to do in the diversity and subcontracting plan during construction. We are scaling back the number of meetings that we're having with COAC and going to a quarterly basis. So they'll resume in the fall, in September, again, focusing on workforce and construction. And then as we start construction in 2023, we'll sort of reinitiate a more regular meeting time. So again, just wanted to share those updates with the HAAB. And I think with that, that concludes my update. So happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions from the HAAB for Megan regards to federal support, the city council meeting tomorrow, anything in regards to early work packages, scheduling? Ms. Sharon, I see your hand.
Thank you for recognizing me. I just wanted to ask, I do know the various processes and the efforts that have been made to engage with community groups, individuals, and I've watched the emerging resistance questions, seeking clarification on I-5, the impact intended and the historical impact. So I'm wondering, after reviewing the comments presented to us today from groups, organized groups, as well as individuals, what more should the HAAB be considering and or ODOT to actually reference? We're talking about going before city council. We're talking about this intergovernmental agreement. There is an effort that is picking up to protest and to maybe derail for a number of reasons that people consider legitimate. And so I'm wondering, other than entertaining community, I'm particularly around the community piece, beyond entertaining these and accepting them, what more or what thinking might ODOT and certainly the HAAB need to do to be more responsive, or at least consider the obligation to community that we professed and that we hold?
That's a great question.
Hope you can
Sharon.
pull out.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, there's so much in there, but what comes to mind for me is like, what can we at ODOT do in partnership with you is, I feel like it's our responsibility to, well, A, tell the truth, but B, make sure that we're giving you the data, the details, the information. And so, you know, I think we've had a lot of conversations around the urban design components. That really is the main focus of the HAAB, and sort of how do we create things in design now that are going to have that impact by way of outcome in the future. But that said, maybe there's some value in us sharing a little bit more about the details of you know, the transportation components of the project. Like, what's the benefit of the auxiliary lane? What's the benefit of the shoulders, to empower you with that information? And then you can use that data as you see fit in your community conversations. So that's one idea that we have. Another way is, I think with the city re-engaging, there is going to be opportunity for kind of a broader conversation too on how does the highway cover, and again, the urban design components that we're talking about from the project sort of perspective, fit in with the kind of broader landscape of Lower Albina. I'm excited about the potential to re-engage, you know, conversations with Albina Vision Trust, with the city re-engaging as well. And so I think, I don't know exactly what that looks like, but I do think we have an opportunity ahead of us to get, ensure that the HAAB is part of those conversations as well.
I would add, if I may, Megan, the project does have a wonderfully talented community engagement team and communications team. And we are working towards, how do we better engage? How do we broaden the scope? How do we arm not only the HAAB, but the rest of the community with the information of the benefits of the project? The CMGC is also engaged quite a bit in community and sharing the benefits of the economic empowerment and jobs. And so I think there's a layered strategy in regards to how we better communicate the truth, as Megan stated. And I appreciate your highlighting how can the HAAB step in here. And it really is as a validator of the conversations that we're having. And so this is an opportunity for us to equip you, as Megan said, with additional detailed information so that as you are engaging your networks, we have a reasonable amount of confidence in the information to be able to share. And then maybe partnering with you, with your agencies and others in the community to share not only the elements of honoring and recognition, but the deeper issues, as Megan stated, with the project and benefits. Any other questions for Megan in regards to the director's update? Seeing none, thank you, Megan, as always. Natalie, if you can share our slides, I'd love to move us forward. So for our HAAB members, this is an opportunity for us to have what I would hope would be our final engagement around the intergovernmental agreement letter of support. You all have seen it. It's been in your email boxes. I have received your edits and have moved those forward. You should have received a draft of that today as well. Again, we would like to finalize any discussion as the council meeting is tomorrow, and make a recommendation from this body to present and include our letter in testimony. So at this moment, I'd love to be able to open the floor if there's any additional thoughts, comments before we make a recommendation. Estelle, I see your hand.
Question is, I'm sorry for not getting edits back to you. Is there any way to make, I don't want to change anything, of course, but to make the language just a little bit stronger about, like, I know it talks about our involvement in the process. Is there a way to just like flat out say, we want to be a part of the governance, like of the body, or any, like, to specifically say, like, we want representation as part of that process? Or is there a reason that we're not saying that specifically?
No, I don't feel like that there's a reason specifically to not state it. If you feel like the language isn't strong enough, I'm okay with that as well. Definitely want to encourage that those who have committed and who have been involved in the process, you all who are legacy and concerned residents and past residents of historic Albina, that you be included in that process moving forward. I think it's so important for that to happen. And if you all feel like we need to beef up the language, I am open to that. We have a short window to do that. The other option is that there is an opportunity for testimony from all of you. There is a deadline of 8:30 tomorrow for you to sign up to do that and to state that in your words, but I would leave that open to you. I serve at you all's pleasure. Other thoughts from the group? Srinivasa, I see your hand.
Yeah, I like Estelle's idea. I don't want to put you on the spot, Estelle, but if you have a sentence and perhaps can drop it in the chat so we can even consider a motion that includes that revision. I'm unable to participate and testify tomorrow, but I like that idea of candidly and directly making that statement as an addition. So thanks.
As a refresher, it currently states as our second point, we want to ensure that the city supports and makes a commitment that the governance and programming would be led by and influenced by the HAAB, by other groups that are already doing the work in the community, Northeast Strategies, Russell Williams, Albina Vision Trust, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the current wording, definitely open. Dr. Richard, I see your hand.
Thank you so much, Ms. Erica. So I think in the last paragraph, it's made a reference to the city providing, and I'm totally paraphrasing, significant investments. I got about 5 questions, but I'll only ask 2. What are those significant investments? And my second question will be, who will decide those significant investments? Now, I pretty much figure the city will have a role in that, but, and maybe it's just, I'm not understanding the letter, but will HAAB have some input into those investments and what they will be? Thank you so much. I yield back to you.
I don't know that I can answer that question in regards to the city making a decision or what we're requesting. If there's something specific the HAAB is requesting, we can state that. The who and the what, I don't know that I can answer that. So, but again, I wanted to draft the letter based on as much of you all's language, information from my one-on-ones with you all, as well as our meetings. And so open to making those brief edits if you all have a suggestion. That would be the first thought. Second thought, again, would be additional written testimony, emphasizing those areas or questions, or having folks who may be available to actually sign up to give testimony and to emphasize those particular areas for testimony. Mr. Richard.
Yes, no,
Yes, sir.
Erica, thank you. No, I appreciate that. And maybe my questions are a little early. And I'm okay with the questions being a little early, but this is something, because I think it said not only the city of Portland, but Multnomah County and Metro. So if that's something that we could like really keep in the forefront as this project, moves along the pathway and the trajectory, that would be great. And the reason why I raised it here among us is because as time moves along, we know that government budgets can change. And so this is why I'm just saying, okay, so what are these significant investments, and will these investments be inextricably tied to what happens in a particular budget cycle when it is time to call for those investments? So I think the more we can keep this in the forefront of our minds and talk about it, and not just actually bring it up when we get to that point, I know for me, it would make me feel a lot more comfortable. And it doesn't necessarily have to be in the letter, because I think that part would take too many logistics to work out before 8:30 tomorrow. So, but thank you so much. I yield back to you, Erica. Thank you. I appreciate it.
No, I think this is excellent conversation. This is the meat of the work, and where your influence and involvement make a difference, and push our elected leaders to before the community. So I'm open to the conversation. Others, thoughts in regards to the IGA letter? Hearing, seeing none, is there a HAAB member who would make a recommendation that we accept the current letter to submit for inclusion in testimony for City Council? I see mouths moving, but folks are muted. Ms. Sharon Gary Smith.
This is Keith Edwards. I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, sir.
Since some of us are not going to be able to be in attendance tomorrow, are all of our signatures or all of our names going to be, I think it's important to have all our names recognized as being of one accord.
Yes, sir.
In whatever decisions that we're making. And I think that, each and every member of the HAAB should be recognized.
Yes, sir. The letter of support will absolutely have all HAAB members' names recognized. Completely agreed, 100%. Yes, sir. Ms. Sharon?
I was just seeking clarification. Was the letter, if I heard correctly, was the letter in support, is that where the requested inclusion was being made? Or was that for, since this is the intergovernmental,
I'm not
is
sure I
that a
understand.
separate document?
I want to make sure I'm understanding your question. So meaning Estelle's inclusion, I believe she was asking for us to make edits to the current letter.
Yes.
We don't have a recommendation on the table for what the edit would be. And
yes,
so completely open to that. It is going to be up to the majority. So I wanted to, so yes, I think I'm understanding correctly now.
and I heard Srinivasa ask if Estelle would drop it into the chat, if I heard correctly, so that we could look at and whether wordsmithing might be necessary or accepted, and then place that in the proper place in the letter that's already standing.
Indeed, I appreciate that. I do see some language here, a commitment to HAAB representation on a community-based governing entity.
Yeah, I took it straight from the IGA actually to reflect the language that they used. So they'll recognize it, and just I thought maybe we could pop it and add it right there in the paragraph where it says where we talk about, gosh, sorry. Second, we want to ensure your support and commitment for the programming. Okay, then influence informed, just put it in that paragraph there, as part of the second thing that we're saying, that we want to ensure support and commitment for programming that will be influenced and informed members of the historic albino community. And also that we're asking, you know, for our commitment of, sorry, to put it, does that make sense?
It does make sense. Thank you. I also see a recommendation from Dr. Richard to suggest we add a strong commitment. Any thought or additional recommendation? It does make complete sense. Happy to make that adjustment. With those two adjustments, adding in the additional language, strong commitment, as well as representation on a community-based governing entity. With those additions to that second paragraph, is there a recommendation from a HAAB member to introduce the letter into record for the city council meeting on tomorrow?
Do it.
Sorry?
With those amendments?
Yes, sir.
With those amendments?
Yes,
I
sir.
so move.
I second.
So it has been moved and seconded with those amendments, excuse me, that we move forward with submitting a joint HAAB letter of support for the intergovernment agreement. Sorry, tongue-tied, just a moment. All right. Are there any additional discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? I know that we have some that I cannot see, so I may just go around and call your names so that I have a record from everyone. So Mr. Clark?
In favor.
Right. Mr. Campbell?
Favor.
Miss Leslie Goodlow? I'll come back to her. Ms. Srinivasa?
Yes, I'm in favor.
Thank you. Ms. Sharon Gary Smith,
Yes, I'm in favor.
Ms. Estelle,
Yes, in favor.
Dr. Richard,
Aye.
thank you. Bryson,
Yep, I'm good.
awesome. Dr. Amato,
I'm in favor.
thank you. Mr. Edwards,
Yes.
yo. Mr. Washington,
Yes.
thank you. Ms. Leslie,
I support.
thank you. And I know that Mr. Modica wasn't able to join us and gave his proxy to Mr. Edwards. With that, all the yays, we have approved submitting with those two edits, this letter of support from the Historic Albina Advisory Board be submitted in support of the City Council IGA. So thank you for moving that forward. I will make those adjustments and send you all a copy as well, as our government relations team will be submitting the letter to council. Thank you for that. Ms. Natalie, if you would put the slides back up for us, please. Awesome. I'm excited to move forward and lean to my colleague, James McGrath, as we look to the next set of recommendations. James?
Thank you, Erica and HAAB members for being here. We have the second half of the agenda and we have two things we'd like to accomplish. We're going to look, we'll look backwards at the results of the engagement survey that we did over the last few months. And then we're going to pivot and look ahead to the next one. We want to get it ready and send it out in time for some robust involvement over the course of the summer. So to do that, we'll jump out of the slides and my colleagues will join me and Tiffany will share the screen on the Miro board. And we'll unpack the results of the visual preference survey that was live and open for input. You have a summary, you received a summary of that. We talked about this briefly when some of the initial results had come in when we were with you last month. Those results have clarified and calcified. You have a PDF that dives into the specifics. What we want to do though is share with you the designer's interpretation of those results and have a dialogue around that. Because ultimately we need to leave today with some decisions. And so I will, I'll remind you that there were essentially three large topics in the previous visual engagement survey. One was the patterns to be used on the crash barrier, the outside face of the crash barrier that you might actually see as a pedestrian or a community member walking by the project. That was one thing. We need a decision. I think it's fairly clear the decision that will be made there. The second one was which medallion to use. There were a number of patterns or design options that were sent out. We'll talk about that and revisit that because we have some conclusions that we're drawing from the input and your previous input. And then the third is the column capitals, the collars. There were some clear preferences expressed by the community. I think they are similar to preferences that the HAAB has expressed previously. And then sort of what we want to do is when we put it all together, what does it mean? And does that tell us something different? So the first, Tiffany's going to zoom us into the first set of topics, which in this case will take the medallions. So the purple and yellow image that you see on the left is the same information that you have that was distributed to you, which is the results of the survey from the public. And there's in purple, there's all of the participants. And then in yellow is a subset of that data that is from African Americans, Black Portlanders, and African Americans. So you can see both of those pieces of data, which was at your request. So the first thing that we notice when we look at this is that 4 of the top 5 patterns have the historic dome the hilltop block as the primary motif. And there is a jazz emblem that was selected as a near favorite in there. But if you add all four of the respondees, there's a clear preference for using what we might call the onion dome as a symbol of the community, or at least an identifier. And so it is the design team's thought and idea that we prioritize that. There will be other locations and places where we can express and tell the stories of the jazz and the Jumptown era and the musical and artistic creativity of the community. But we thought for the infrastructure project, simplicity has some power, and that we would bring a consistent use of the topmost, the selected most often emblem, which is the logo of the project as developed by PDX Black Excellence, with a simplified color palette. And that is our proposal to you. We believe you have the backing of the community to make that decision. It is an elegant decision, and it gives us the ability to bring consistency and simplicity to the number of places where we deploy this. So when I put on my maintenance hat, when I put on my hat 20 years from now, it'll be easier for upkeep, and it'll be easier for replacement if we have a consistent. And we're looking at up to 12 locations on the project. These will be placed on new columns that face the community, that are the outside face of the project. There's a number of those down near the Moda Center itself and the convention center. 2 on Oregon that kind of face you as you come over the steel bridge to the east side. All of the columns that support the new structures on the outside of I-5 over the Rose Quarter Transit Center. That's that cluster there. And then of course the 2 that flank Russell, so that if you are coming down the hill from Russell from east to west, the medallions would flank your sort of the human experience around Russell. So that is our proposal to you. That is our having heard from you, sent out images into the world for broader engagement, gotten data back. It is our proposal to you that we synthesize this data in this way. And I'll leave it there before we move on to some of the other topics for any discussion.
Any questions, discussion, comment in regards to the medallions and the recommendation from the urban design team?
Okay. I think we're going to keep moving. Let's skip the crash barrier, because a related topic is going to be the column colors at the top of all of those new columns. Again, there was a clear preference for the color, expressing and bringing color into what can otherwise be a drab environment. So the tile options scored higher. And there was also a clear preference amongst Black Portlanders and African Americans for option number 2, which is really a pattern. And maybe if you could zoom in even further, Tiffany, to that particular pattern. That was the pattern that was most desirable amongst Black Portlanders, comes in second overall, but clearly you put those 2 together, a real preference for tile, which also I think in some ways is, I'll say it's easier to accomplish. And we know from centuries of experience that tile is actually a really great weathering surface, a really great surface that can receive cleaning and whatnot, and is color fast in the ways that some other materials are not. So we think it's a really good and durable choice, even though it has the potential to be applied later. It is still it's still a very durable material with easy maintenance characteristics. So there again, we looked at all of the data. You can zoom back out for us, Tiffany. We looked at all of the data, and as designers, there was a clear preference here. You can see just below the other thing that's been circled, there's a clear preference that these patterns be the same, so that we're bringing some consistency to the expression. There will be lots of other places where many things can happen, many stories can be told. We've started those conversations with you. But right now, it seems that the medallions and the column capitals that are related to each other should be the same. Last week, a number of HAAB members joined a conversation in the collaboration forum and talked about how do these two parts and pieces work together. So we feel like, okay, we have a pattern that is preferred, we have a medallion that is preferred, but the colors of the two clashed a little bit, or there was some discussion around, do the colors work well together? So on the left here is the option as currently selected, where green is a key feature and an important color in traditional color combinations. And what we did at the HAAB's request last week was just explore some other options where we preserve the pattern, but we try to integrate some of the colors from the medallion. And so we're in that conversation right now. And I guess that there is a question here for you all, and I know we're jumping from 30,000 feet right into details, but that is our mandate, is to get this stuff pushed into the construction project. Is there we have our pattern, we have our medallion. Is there a clear choice among the options 1, 2, and 3 here from HAAB members around the specific tile color patterns that you see? Or is this something where you want to see us develop a few more options? I don't think this is we're not going to go back out to the community on this. I feel like we've gotten some really good feedback. This is really about some color choices. So any dialogue about this, we can certainly come back with some more alternatives. This was really stemmed from a dialogue that occurred just last week.
Yeah, I like the first one, but I'd like to see that purple incorporated in to that center dot around the yellow. So if you pull the bottom purple color right there on your color wheel, now I don't know where this crushed orange or whatever this is in here, but maybe if you put, I know it would be looking at some of the flag colors, but those bricks there that running on the up and down, are they purple like the bottom of the logo here? Are those purple bricks or is that black?
They're black,
It's black.
as currently rendered, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's good. So then if you can put that purple in that center dot right there between the yellow, it can sort of pull down some color out of that.
Yep.
And sort of, have some adjusted color that would bring those two together. So put some kind of purple in that center. Now, I don't know where you're going to be able to line that crush color at in there, but it may not. So if you can bring back something with that in that center dot.
Yep. And what I think we can also do is bring it at a larger scale or in a human scale context. So I'm seeing in the chat, as well as Mr. Washington's comments about, let's just make these colors, the color palettes, let's bring them. We like the pattern, but let's bring those colors into a closer arrangement.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to bring up, at the Design Collaboration Forum, there was a little bit of discussion about the meaning of the colors in this pattern
Right.
were more important to people than the colors, the meaning of the colors in the medallion. So what we did was try and decrease the visibility of the green, but not bring in the origin purple. So I'm curious if other HAAB members feel the same about that. If they'd like more of the purple in here, or if decreasing the hierarchy of the green helps them, these two color palettes go together.
Would you be able to put a line of some kind around this top of this, of the reef on the top that's the same crush color as the logo around the top? If there's a border.
So a border around the top of this. Yeah, I mean, there's
that rust color there.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, this is really large.
That's a little too big, buddy.
But you're saying like something
Down.
like that.
Yeah, but on not the second one, but bring it to the first one.
Got it.
But that's a different color than this crush that I'm talking about up here.
Yeah, yeah. You can match it in a
But
better drawing program than Miro.
Right.
So how about we, as the design team, take another pass at this? We can maybe even submit it to you via email, and an exhibit that shows these things next to each other and in proximity. But are we generally moving in the right direction? We have the right pattern. We'll work on some colors. We've selected the medallion. Okay. Now, also visible in this image is the crash barrier pattern up above, but we'll zoom out a little bit and just show you the data, which again, you have yourselves. But on the crash barrier pattern, there was a clear pattern, or there was a clear favorite by all audiences and all of the community members for this sort of sheared triangle pattern, which is exciting because we feel like we have and you have the backing to make that choice and to move forward, and we can instruct the designers to include that pattern. Maybe Tiffany, you can zoom in just so people remember what we're talking about here. Of all of them, it is that. And what's exciting about this pattern, and I think we'll be pivoting to this in a moment, is this is a particular pattern that was inspired by other patterns that we've seen that you've recommended. And it also is a pattern that we can repeat and continue throughout the elements of the project. So we'll zoom all the way out. I feel like we are getting what we need from you this evening about this information in the past. We will start to move this forward. We'll do some color diagrams to get the tile pattern exactly right. There's another part of the survey that warrants mentioning, which is the open-ended questions. And we intend to go forward in future surveys and continue to ask those open-ended questions. And there were a couple of themes that were suggested, other symbols, other parts of the history and parts of the story that can be told. And we intend to use that to enrich the other elements of recognition throughout the project. So even though we've asked questions about tile colors or patterns, the information that is inbound to us and to the project, we're going to harvest that and use it in other parts of the project. And it's good for you to be aware of the things that the community is asking about. I'm sure many of these you know well yourselves and you hear in your conversations with folks, but we have it, it's documented, and it will continue to enrich and inform other parts of our expression and our work together. So I did want to acknowledge that because it's good. It's really good for us to pick up these words, pick up this information from folks, and hopefully it helps them to feel listened to. So that's our looking backwards. And Ms. Erica, I don't know if you want. I don't know that we have a need to make it an official voted recommendation like the letter. I feel like I'm leaving with some clear direction on yes on the medallions, yes on the crash barrier pattern, and come back to us with some more options on the tile. But frankly, that's okay because tile comes later. We can instruct the contractor to get ready for it, and the specific pattern, we've got some time. So I feel good. Do we want to just make sure that we're all in alignment?
I think that's a great idea. Let's just clarify for HAAB members that you all are in agreement with what James just stated, based on the information from you all and from the survey, that the medallions, we are in favor of that, that the crash barrier patterns, we are in favor of that, and that we are looking to the design team to work a bit more with the colors of the tile so that there is not a clash or more of a consistency between the medallion and the colors. Is that everyone's understanding? Maybe I see heads nodding, thumbs up. So we feel like the design team can move forward with that direction. I see folks coming in and nodding. Thank you so much.
Wonderful.
Awesome. Thank you, James.
Okay. So we're going to stay in Miro and we're going to look ahead to the next set of elements that we want to put out on the street for commentary over the course of the summer. So that is our intention, is we're going to talk to you tonight about the next set of visual preferences and survey and online work that will be available to folks over the course of the summer, with the intention that we come back in September and we have a meeting like this where we make some decisions. So we'll have the data, we'll have it all figured out, we'll have some assumptions, and the design team will come to you with proposals for your ratification. But before we put anything out there in the public conversation, we wanted to make sure that we, and these are topics that we've been working with you on for a few months now. None of this content is really radically new. It's all built on things that we've been talking about, and it comes in 3 parts. So we're going to talk about walls. We're going to talk about one very specific wall, wall 15, and Marianne will lead us through that. We're going to talk about walls in general, and we're going to use a specific wall, but it's really, we want to talk to the community about how to make patterns on walls in particular. And these are the infrastructure walls. This isn't the wall that faces Harriet Tubman Middle School. These are the more infrastructure types of walls that we'll see on the project. So there's a specific wall, there's walls in general, and then we're going to talk about bridge lettering. So we're going to step you through the content that we want to put out for broader public involvement. We can have a dialogue. Do we have the right range of alternatives? Do we want to not include some of those things? That is your prerogative. So we want to give you the opportunity to shape the information that gets sent out into the public. So the first thing we're going to tackle is wall 15. This is something that you will remember well, and Marianne will step us through a sequence of resources, both of what it looks like today, what it has the potential to look like tomorrow, and what we're asking you is, what is the right range? Right now we have about 5 design options. We want to ask you, is that the right 5? Do we want to, we can cross some of those out today based on your preferences, but then it would go out for broader community comment, and then we together would have to make a decision about the execution of wall 15 in the future. So with that, Marianne.
Great, thanks, James. We did discuss this at the design collaboration last week, and this also was discussed at the April HAAB meeting. And at our last meeting last week, it was obvious that it was a little confusing where wall 15 was. And if you zoom in a little bit on that image, that would be great. We're looking at the west side of I-5 between Holiday and Oregon. And this is a view, this wall is very, very large. It's over 400 feet long. It's already there. It will be reconstructed and possibly be a bit taller. It would be hard to see the whole wall at once. I guess you could see it maybe if you were in a drone like this view here. But what we wanted to do is make sure you understood the context. There's some images of what it looks like right now below to the right. And this is what it looks like right now. The relationship between the wall and the back of the sidewalk will remain the same in some areas at the edges, but in the center, there'll be an area for planting as there is now. If you were to zoom in on the photo to the right, keep going to the right, down. You can see that there's a triangle there now, and that triangle will exist in the future as well. So we'll be able to do some landscaping in there. We came to you in April with I believe four ideas. And so maybe we could start at the bottom of those ideas. And we brought in a range of ideas. So one was cut steel panels with lettering that said Albina. It could be lit at night, illuminated at night to make those even brighter, with some landscaping in the center where we can. On the edges where it gets very tight between the sidewalk and the wall, we are looking at maybe some vertical green walls that would be on a kind of a trellis structure. So moving to the next photo to the left, thank you. Here's an option. We could do rotating murals. We could work with artists in the community and have the opportunity for artistic expression. It could be a rotating collection, maybe on a yearly basis. Moving up to other options. This is another one that looking at landscaping as much as we could, and then kind of coming in with albina, a little bit like Hollywood in California, with the letters up on the hillside. Then the next image we had was bringing in historic imagery of historic albina. These could be printed on metal perforated panels. And we would work with a historian to get some pertinent images with historic albina framing that. So it would be very striking as you come in from the steel bridge heading to the east, and you would see this. I think it gives a great opportunity to define and to present what the neighborhood looked like. We've also discussed that this isn't the only opportunity to really present the history of albina, and we've talked about having much more historical information available on the cover. This would be kind of just a visual introduction. People aren't really spending as much time here. It's really kind of a pass-through space, but I think it would be arresting visually. But what we heard from you guys in April was that you really liked the idea of the history here, and you really liked the floating letters, the Hollywood sign. And so we came up with a composite, which is right here, shown here, where we still have bringing in as much vegetation as we can in the areas that are available, but also combining it in with some of these big historic panels. So that's what we heard from you guys. What we'd love to get your feedback on that. As James said, we would take this, it would be as part of the next survey. Should we show all of these options? Are there any that you think we should take off now? I'm just gonna open it up to discussion.
Thanks, Marianne. And Tiffany, if you could zoom out, maybe show all 5. We want to put this range of ideas out on the street. We're going to develop the survey in a way that people will, understand where this wall is. They won't necessarily have all of the information and overarching conversations that we all have had together, because that's really hard to develop in a succinct kind of visual survey. This is where we would tell this chapter of the story and this chapter of the story. You all are now aware of the larger arc, but nonetheless, we think there's going to be some really interesting feedback, and there'll be some preferences expressed for these 5 options.
So we're looking to you all, HAAB members. Out of these 5 designs, is there one in particular that or 2 that we should not include in the broader community engagement as we look to our other friends and family and coworkers to participate in the survey? Are there designs that stand out to you in particular that you feel represent the historic albina community well? Looking for your comments and feedback here so the design team can move forward with this survey. Mr. Edwards. You're muted. You're still muted, Mr. Edwards. There
Okay.
you go.
Okay. I'm sorry. I'm kind of torn between some of the designs. I like them, but I always go to a place, unfortunately, where I think about the longevity or the security. Because when I look at several of the designs, I'm concerned about the problem that we have with homeless folks. I don't want anybody living up there. I want to be real clear about that. I certainly don't want somebody stealing the A because they figure that they've got some kind of sorority prank that they have to do. So, I just get concerned about those particular things. I don't, I have some pride in this, and I think our community certainly will have pride in it. And we don't want something that's going to get vandalized or destroyed. That's easily vandalized or destroyed. I'll put it that way. or that there's, you know, we want it to be someplace that, you know, that folks can see, but I don't want a homeless tent, you know, or somebody camping out, you know, behind the albino sign or behind the trees and that kind of thing. So that's one of the challenges that we have. But other than that, the designs are fine. But I know that there's always a challenge between being able to appreciate something and then also being able to have it secure so it doesn't get vandalized.
Right. If I could just, we didn't show there's a section that we had done that shows that between I-5 above and the top of this wall, there's about a 30% grade. So it's pretty steep in there. That's not to say someone wouldn't come in there to vandalize it, but camping probably won't happen on the hillside. There's definitely the possibility of somebody camping in the part right behind that white truck, because that area would be more level. These are issues that we're discussing throughout the project. Anywhere we have landscaping is how do we keep homeless people out? How do we keep places, you know, how do we keep any of the walls from getting vandalized? So there are definitely issues we're discussing. We went to visit a large print shop where they can make these panels. I went with Bill and they showed us how they can put these coatings on there that make it so that it's very hard for the paint to adhere so that they can be cleaned off. But that's not to say that vandalism wouldn't necessarily be a part of a situation that we wouldn't be able to control. So thanks for bringing that up.
Mr. Washington?
Yeah, I think I like what I heard so far about this, but you know, they're going to tag it anyway. So the one with the graffiti, I would suggest we leave out because you're going to probably get it anyway. I do like the historic albino one, the one to the right, second row. And I also like the letters on the top one, the albino one there. So those two sort of interest me a little bit. I think, like I said, I've tried this graffiti thing and all that. It gets graffiti on top of graffiti anyway. So if you get somebody graffiti artist to come in and do a real nice thing and you pay them, somebody's gonna come in and tag over it anyway. So this whole notion of this tagging and all that, I think it has its place, but this is just a little bit too big a space. It's too lovely of one too to have that sort of come in. And then the other thing about the tagging protection, that the life of that stuff only has 3 cleanings with it. And so the city or whoever is charged with maintaining this thing, at some point in time, y'all gonna look at it and go, well, do we really have to do this again? And it's gonna cost some money. So that protection code only lasts for 3 taggings. So 3 cleanups. We've been having that problem with that piece on MLK there on the street down there by Killer Burger over there. And they tag it. Each time they tag it, you got rack coming in there to clean it. But then at the same time, after 3 cleanings, they don't want to do it no more. So it's just all relative. But I like those 2.
Thank you. I see Andrew Campbell has his hand raised. Thanks, Mr. Washington.
Good evening, everyone. Hopefully everyone can hear me. But I agree with what Mr. Washington mentioned, as in like combo between historical albino. Like I would suggest, if able, if we can still add historical to this image that we're seeing. I know the trees are kind of in the other way, but I'm sure there could still be a creative design to include the historical part on this current image that we're looking at, and then that's kind of like the combo. And I would be concerned about maintenance, just kind of just echoing, because honestly, the bureaus of transportation on maintenance don't really have a good record. So that's something to keep in mind, especially if it's going to be a historical landmark within Portland. So yeah, that's just my suggestions, and I know I will follow up more on community engagement opportunities throughout the on the summer and fall to show like the top 3 suggestions, I would say, just because it makes everything a little easier on everyone. Appreciate it, everyone.
Thanks, Andrew. Definitely appreciate it. Others? I can't see everyone's hands. I'm hearing recommendations of 3, seeing, I just heard that again from Andrew. Is there a design in particular that the design team can weed out? I haven't heard anyone commenting on the bottom design there with the etched panels.
Well, we might have you call the question about removing the rotating murals, if that's an idea that's even worth putting out there.
Indeed.
And
Mr.
remember,
Edwards,
tonight's not the decision, it's just the range of options.
Correct. Mr. Edwards and then Estelle.
Thank you. I like the idea of the rotating murals, but I think that I have to go with what I think John was alluding to, is that the panels that are on the historic albina and the panels that are on above on the albina, and again adding the historic up there. But those, I think those panels, and they can be rotated as well, but I think those are very significant to the community.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Edwards. Estelle?
Oh, well, I strongly like the rotating murals just because I think it's a way to possibly keep the community engaged in it. If there's contest or just showcasing artists from the albino community. That's the only reason why I liked that one and the historic albina one, and maybe that could also showcase art as well, but that's just my thoughts.
Well, this is good. I mean, in truth, we can put all 5 options out into the world for feedback, and much like last time, we might learn some things that apply to other parts of the project. But I see, Andrew, you have your hand up.
The one with the panels and the albina above, how is the lighting going to be on there to be able to visually see it from afar?
Good question. It
could be an opportunity for maybe the albina sign, not in kind of a clownish way, but there could be some illumination from that could cast down onto the panels. And it would be kind of cool to see that rotated out periodically. And I just like the simplicity of the rest of the landscape that it's in, that kind of envelopes it. So I think this is a clean approach right here.
Yeah, it's funny you brought that up because I was noticing that I had forgotten to discuss the lighting. You can see there's little teeny light fixtures there, but yeah, that could all be illuminated. We could have uplights on the historic panels as well at night. So that I don't know if that would prevent graffiti, but you would definitely be able to see it.
Okay, Erica, with your permission, I'm going to move us on. I think we got a range. We don't have to take anything off the table. We can have a summer's series of engagements on this and hear what community members have to say about these options. I want to pivot to another set of conversations around walls. So wall 15 is conspicuous, and we think it is, and you have agreed that it's a place where we could do something special. But there are a number of other, we might just call them more boring walls around the project. Walls that are holding up parts of the highway, walls that are holding parts of the earth back from the highway, and so on and so forth. We have selected a particular wall, probably the longest wall on the project, as a place for us to explore ideas of pattern making. It happens to be the wall. It's got 3 names because of the complexity of the wall and how it might be built over time. And we don't need to share that with the community, but it alternatively goes by wall 2A, 2B, and 24. These are all parts of this construction in and around the Harry Tubman Middle School. That is not the point of tonight's conversation. It's really about how do we make these walls better neighbors and more interesting. So we've taken this one wall as a nice large canvas for us to explore some pattern ideas. And these ideas actually emerge from some conversations we had very early on in our conversations with you, almost even before the highway covers and the independent cover assessment. Bill had done some sketches about patterns and how do we make patterns on wall? How do you take something big and make it smaller? How do you take something that's large scale and bring it down to a more human scale, or something that's digestible or knowable? So we're using one wall, but it really can teach us about the patterns that we can use on some other walls. And we don't have to talk about all of those other walls yet with the community, and we can certainly come back and talk about every specific example of walls on the project with you later. But we wanted to go through some sort of bigger ideas first. So Tiffany, if you could sort of, help me move down. The first one, concept A, is to take something that is long and thin and start to break it up into vertical pieces so that you bring a rhythm to it. Think of that one as really around rhythm. The second one says, maybe you take this long and thin thing and you start to create bands of interest. You try to break down the scale vertically as opposed to just horizontally, and you explore different kinds of patterns and how they can contribute. And some of these walls get really complicated, so there is a break in the wall where that it could work to switch a pattern. Some of those we kind of have to introduce that. But this one says, what if we tried to break the scale of this thing down horizontally and create some levels and some calmness in what otherwise can be kind of a wobbly environment? Concept number 3 is really about what if we just drew your attention to one part of the wall and said we gave it like this crowning achievement. The most conspicuous part of the wall is the part that you might see up above. There might be landscape below that, but the crown of the wall would always be the same. And you'll notice that that crown of the wall could be very similar to the crash barrier pattern. So these two parts of the infrastructure would be in dialogue. Concept D, as many good things, came from the conversation last week. Well, what if? And I don't know whose idea this was, but there was some interest in the pinstriping, the vertical sort of bold vertical lines from concept B and the crown. And so this is sort of a hybrid that we're putting. This is hot off the presses and is here for you. In general, the squares that you see on these patterns are about 4 foot by 4 foot, 4 foot by 4 foot, excuse me. And so, and they are generally stacked like bricks. They're in a stacked bond, so they're offset. So there's some complexity there. We'll have to do a lot more work to instruct the contractor on how to build this with precision. But if you could zoom back out, we have 4 ideas. Our goal was to not offer the community so many choices and so many patterns, but try to get a simple set of things in front of them. We together can refine this going forward. The idea was to try to give them a really tight subset of possibilities to draw their attention to the differences. So that's where we are. We have, let's break this thing up vertically and create this sort of staccato rhythm. And there's more interesting things that we might do. If that is really your preference and the community's preference, we can make that option even better. Option B tries to take something big and break it in a couple of pieces to introduce visual interest and so on and so forth. So this is what we'd like to put out, a range of alternatives, but again, it's up for you. This is, this particular wall faces the highway. There'll be other instances where this kind of patterning could face the community instead of just the highway. And so we're trying to get you some feedback from the community about their preferences. And this is our current range. Any thoughts on this? This has got to be the most exciting stuff ever, right? Designing concrete walls for infrastructure. Look at Bill, he loves this stuff.
Sounds like you all are in the right direction, and we move this forward to the community. Any other thoughts or questions in regards to these walls? Ms. Sharon Gary Smith?
I don't know if I'd be offering anything that would actually be significantly informing about the walls, but I just put in the chat that I was at Juneteenth on Saturday through rain and horrible conditions, and on Sunday. And I know what we are working to do and the importance of it, but I was really struck anew with the conversations and the difficult history as I stood in Lallis Albina Park and gazed westward, watching the stacked up traffic north and south on I-5 and realizing that that was Tubman and the neighborhood. And I watched for long periods of time and recognized how important it is to build and create some beauty. I know that sounds counterintuitive probably, in that space for separation, but also for movement that is not as impactful as it currently is. I was really sobered by having the chance to stand quietly and listen to all this noise. And, you know, I would suggest everybody try that one time. It really brought home to me the magnitude and the necessity for this effort. So I hope as we look at these walls, all of that really matters more to me than it did at the beginning, as much as I was being informed. So I just wanted to share it. It was a wonderful Juneteenth, but the significance of the place really came home to me.
That's powerful. Thank you. Other thoughts in regards to this element before James moves us forward?
Yeah, James, what about stamps of, like, instead of just the lines, actual stamps of like a rose or a gecko or you know, a turtle? What about those types of things?
All possibilities. When last we spoke with the HAAB on this topic, there was a real interest in no gimmicks. No, a rose is a rose, and that could mean all of Portland, could mean all of Oregon. And we really want to focus on something that's simple and elegant, but speaks to Albina.
Well, so, a black rose is simple and elegant, and it speaks to Albina.
Okay.
You know, so
yeah, so I think that's certainly an option. This particular wall faces the highway, and so communicating with highway and roadway users is something that other projects do, and we could certainly do. We didn't detect that there was a real appetite to do it, but if that appetite emerges, we can develop an option like that.
Yeah, I mean, if there was some type of design that, I mean, I was just merely suggesting, that I've seen in different states that the carvings or etchings or whatever in concrete along the highways look kind of attractive. It just depends on how it's done and what colors are added to it. So just a suggestion, instead of just boring lines, and but then some of those lines on the upper crowns look appealing. But I was just thinking, if you can put a creature or something, a series of them or something on the wall, what would they be? I'm not sure what they would be, if it's a salmon or whatever the case might be. I mean, so just some thoughts.
Yeah, I think, Mr. Washington, we did kind of talk about that early on. So our apologies for not including going forward. I think it was our general sense that the HAAB was thinking we didn't want it to look like Seattle and the moving fish or the other things, and trying to find things that were more identifiable to the African diaspora. And but again, we have a super talented and creative design team that can help infuse all of our stuff.
We eat creatures. There are all kinds of animals we eat as Black folks.
Indeed.
Raccoons, possums, all kinds of shit. Y'all put all kinds of stuff on that wall.
Oh
So-
my.
So I was just thinking, so, but anyway, next, it's all good.
Mr. Washington, we need some catfish and collard greens on there.
Something, I mean, you know, yeah, I mean, we eat some, but I mean, just all kinds of fish, shapes of fish and stuff. I mean, it's just how it's shaped and designed. I mean, didn't necessarily want it to be traditional or boring, but how to integrate it into these lines, if there's a shape or something that can go into that. So maybe you guys could investigate that a little bit further, just to rehatch it if it's possible. Look at some kind of significant animal or creature or shape that would sort of intersect with these lines.
Okay. Yeah, I think one thing earlier when we looked at earlier on when we looked at images for walls and the surfaces, we were looking more, I think, organically of the Pacific Northwest. Started looking at cones and things like that, pine cones and that sort of stuff. But I think we can take another look and see if we can find something closer to the African American experience and see if there's a symbol there that we can kind of find.
Got you.
So I'm looking at the clock, and we do have one more complicated topic. So I'm hearing these are interesting, and maybe there's a fifth option. There's certainly thousands more options that can come forward. This will be our initial range. We'll develop a fifth, maybe send that out via email.
Just kind of, if I could, just kind of piggybacking on John and Sharon as well. I think that if something, like you say, besides the lines are kind of plain and mundane. If we could have something that was indigenous to our community, which could be, the trees and the plants and things that are in our community, or maybe even some animals that perhaps are in our community. So just some thoughts.
Yep. Something more lyrical than geometric. Yep. Okay. We do have one last topic to discuss tonight, and it is a topic in a couple of pieces. So we have, maybe the overarching map will help to get us started, Tiffany. We have a number of places where the new bridges will cross over existing streets. And we've talked with you before about how we can title those crossings, make them more like gateways or celebrations or recognitions. There is the bridge that will be built over Russell, and it gives us, that face of that bridge gives us an opportunity to say something in words. And similarly, down at Holiday, down at Multnomah, and at Oregon, primarily on the west side, because the new bridges other new bridges aren't really exposed. You can't see them from the edge, can't see them from the outside. So there are these 6 locations where we can say something. And so we want to zoom out. We've had this conversation with you before, but now we want to put it out for public commentary. So the first thing, if you could zoom out, Tiffany, we want to talk about the style of lettering. This is aesthetics. We want people's visual preference and opinions about how do we make the letters. So we have some images. We have 3 types of the ways that we can do this that we want to put forward. One is we punch holes in metal panels, and that's option number 1. We actually cut them out of panels, and the panel is sort of the primary visual experience, but you can see the letters, and there'll probably be a bit backlighting. Versus standalone lettering, where the surface of the letter is solid, but it's really about a backlit experience. So we have a sequence of images to sort of share what that might look like. And then the third is where the face of the letter is actually lit itself, almost like a neon sign or other signs, where the letter itself is the light. So we have 3 styles in which we can accomplish this. We're going to ask folks about which style do you like? the most, and we'll see if we can get some kind of preference on that. We've exposed all of this to you before, and there hasn't been a clear answer just yet, but that's okay. We'll get more feedback. And then we also wanted to ask them, well, what would we say? And so part of this is going to be around content and words. At Russell, what would we say? Let's say they pick a style. We really like a script or a cursive backlit thing. Okay, great. Well, what would we actually say? So we're starting to solicit that kind of feedback. And we're going to give folks a subset of things that might actually be said on those bridges. And we're also going to give them an opportunity to offer something else in terms of maybe they'll come up with something that we haven't. So let's take this one piece at a time. If we go up to the styles, are you all generally okay with those three different styles? That there's big panels with punched openings, kind of like what you saw on wall 15, that there's these backlit lighting and frontlit lighting. Seems like a good range, all of which could be really successful in night and day on the project. But again, we just want to make sure that we have the HAAB's concurrence before we send anything out into a public conversation.
No objections.
Okay. So now let's tackle the what would we say? If we were at Russell Street, we're going to have probably limited real estate. We haven't figured out how big the letters are, how much we can say, but generally we're thinking of these three potential building blocks: historic Russell Street, historic Albina. We'll give the folks the option to say we don't want lettering here at all, or it's not important to us, or another suggestion. It'll come back to us if somebody says Jumptown or they say whatever it is they say. It'll come back to us. We'll have to discuss that together about, all right, now we got to look at all these locations. Do we want to say the same thing at all the locations? Do we want to say something different? We don't have to go there tonight. We don't have to go there yet. We just want to make sure that we're starting to solicit and propose things that you are supportive of. So at Russell, are these the right basic choices? Historic Russell Street, historic Albina, and Albina? Are there things you would add or take away? And by the time we get through all of them, we'll have heard your thoughts on a couple of these, so we won't repeat ourselves.
I like historic Albina at every location.
That will be an option.
And then, then Russell Street, whatever street, whatever location it is, would be, in addition.
So historic Albina as the preface, colon, and then the name of the street.
Yes.
We can add that as an option.
I see other thumbs up and head nods for that as well, James.
Okay. Anything else specific to Russell Street? And we'll make sure to copy and to get this format, Mr. Edwards, and attach it to each of the subsequent locations. Anything else? Okay, let's go down to, now remember, Multnomah and Holiday are right next to each other on the same bridge. It'll be one long thin bridge that goes across that whole area around the Rose Quarter Transit Center. But there's still locations above the streets, right? Like there's more conspicuous locations. So we could have two separate. It was the design team's judgment that we not put words facing the Moda Center and trying to compete with all of that visual noise. But there were HAAB members in last week's meeting that said, we don't agree with that. We want to make sure that there's an opportunity to name those things regardless of the current context. So I just mentioned that because two of these things are next to each other. So at Holiday, facing the east side, there's the potential to use a word like Jumptown, which Mr. Washington has suggested as part of previous redevelopment ideation things. There was redevelopment ideas. Jumptown was a word that is recognized and potentially beloved. That's the one unique thing that could be used here. It's the closest bridge to probably the locus of historic Jumptown. It's not precisely adjacent to a lot of the clubs and a lot of that historic energy, but it's a potential word that could be used.
Right. Remember that it's interfacing both sides of the the convention center, and the other side is the stadium. So it would be really nice to somehow or another join those two sides with some kind of energy, but keeping this whole little dull area in here lit up. I mean, it should be a really pop-in intersection here, because it is kind of dark from time to time, but like I said before, there was a real big design that was designed for this square by that hotel parking lot that was on, and they somehow scrapped that. So there's really no art on the backside of the parking lot that's there. So this whole intersection has the potential to be really nicely lit up and to have at least that joining connection between the convention center and the stadium. So however we can make it pop, you know, that's probably would be and so it should be some moving lights or some moving energy in there somehow, rather if it's graphics or something. Just my suggestion, I'm sticking to it.
Ms. Sharon, I see your hand as well. Thank you, Mr. Washington.
I'm so tickled that I really echo a lot of what John was saying. So that tickled me to think about, you know, this area that was supposed to be popping and seldom is. And the fact that Jumptown, when I think of the Trailblazers and all, are the biggest act in town in an area that is not particularly exciting most of the time, the connotation for Jumptown and the proximity to where it really was jumping could be exciting. I mean, different people might interpret it, and it might be a revitalization of the area that was supposed to happen and didn't with the Trailblazers, and but is now the Moda Center. So I would like us to consider Jumptown for a number of reasons around ringing that area and elevating the idea of energy and culture and excitement, of which there is none right now. So thanks, John.
Any other words?
Shirley.
Any other words come to mind, or we'll take Mr. Edwards' suggestion and offer that as an, historic Albina holiday, historic Albina Multnomah. Okay, and then at Oregon Street, which is sort of a small, it's a smaller part of the project, but it's actually really conspicuous. It's right next to Wall 15. Many folks who are taking transit and or walking and rolling across the steel bridge, coming up from the Esplanade, or even driving a car across the steel bridge. Oregon Street overcrossing is the first thing you'll actually see. So it's relatively conspicuous. And so here again, we got the same slate of words. It is a little bit strange that Oregon is the name of the street in the state, but nonetheless, it could say Historic Albina Oregon Street. Anything else come to mind here? Again, just alternatives. We'll have to put all these pieces together after the summer when we get the feedback from the community.
James, I would also note that this is right next to Wall 15, where
it has the potential to say Historic Albina.
Yeah, or Albina, and then so it's a little out of context to look at it. You know, there's a lot of Albinas. How they all fit together is important to consider.
Okay, well, we'll see what our fellow community members have to offer in the open-ended section. We'll give them this subset. I think recognizing that we're nearing time, we've heard enough from you that we feel like we can get this information packaged and sent out. I think it is our intention, working with other parts of the project team, to get this new survey released after July 4th and have it stay open all of July, most of August, winding down in August, so we can collect those results, process them, present them to you, and then start moving on to decisions. So that's our general timeline. And I think that Urban Design, once again, thanks you for your attention.
James, thank you. It's been and it's a pleasure to work with you and Marianne and Bill and Tiffany. I would agree with Ms. Sharon, thinking about these are lines, these are designs, but it is something that I think we'll look in years to come and be proud of what it represents to us and to our children and to the legacy of Albina, and that we had a part in beautifying, as she said, and restoring some joy in certain areas of our city, and honoring the legacy that we come from. So I'm appreciative for your attention to the detail, James and team, and look forward to hearing the community's feedback. Ms. Natalie, if you'd share our slides again. Well, I'm so excited to talk about community engagement, as we have as well. So Good in the Hood coming up this weekend, 3 days. The Rose Quarter Project will be visible and a part of that community celebration as well. Please feel free to stop by and identify your involvement on the project and incorporating your voice into the community event. We also are looking for your support in regards to this summer design survey. So based on all of this information that the urban design team has presented to you today, your feedback today, they'll be working with their team and the communications to put together a design survey that will be dispersed broadly to our community. So again, we'll be looking to you to be distributing to your networks and your family members and your social media and all of those that you have touch points and influence, so that they can help us make this decision moving forward, so that we feel confident that the broader community has spoken in regards to these elements of recognition regarding historic Albina. Summertime, we'll also be having an update to the environmental assessment, and there will be technical analyses. And then the diversity plan is a work in process, and so there'll be some continued work there. Realize that your input into urban design is helping develop what goes into some of these early work packages. And so a diversity plan is aligned with the early work packages, and how do we get more businesses of color, DBEs, working and involved in this construction of the project. And then as we move into the end of 2022 and early is finalizing these work packages. So this is important work for us. I know some of it may seem a bit monotonous, but thank you, Ms. Sharon, for that insight and your experience this weekend. I hope that you all take pride and pleasure into being involved in a process that is so detailed regarding honoring our community. Next slide, please. Dr. Holt, if you would close us out, I would appreciate it.
My delight. Well done, as always, Ms. Erica. Thank you for the robust process. Today is June 21st. It is the longest day of the year, and things are starting to get shorter going forward. It's interesting that this process can feel like that. It can feel very much like a long process. But the truth of the matter is, all that you've done to build up to this point at some moment becomes shorter. And we're going to actually be able to implement the work. I want to express appreciation for those of you who have a can-do and commitment attitude, to have invested as long as you've invested. Your voices, we said it early on, was going to make a difference. Hopefully you're seeing that transparent and authentic support and action. That Oregon Department of Transportation is doing business differently because of you, because of your willingness to be involved. Thanks for your effort and your energy and your intelligence, your expertise. If questions and concerns arise, do not hesitate to reach out to myself or Ms. Warren, and we will do everything we can to facilitate and make sure that you're getting what you need. To the community at large, keep listening, keep leaning in, keep challenging the process. This is going to be transparent. We're going to do things differently, and we're going to land what we said. So the promises made become promises kept. Have a good day, everybody. Take care. Go enjoy some sun. Bye-bye.
Bye all.